This is the third time that I'm talking to you. The first time I was talking about what architecture can do for our society and how important it is to have somewhere to live and somewhere to feel a sense of belonging to. The second time I talked to you, I was talking about qualities and how we can create values with architecture. And I showed you a work that we've been doing on international level, on the EU level, with quality criteria for architecture that creates value for the whole society. And today I was asked to, give a very, very quick presentation of the Planning and Building Act in Sweden and how Swedish municipalities work with strategic policies for architecture. So I think I have 12 minutes to do that. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pamela. So I need to see, I can see my pictures there, perfect. So a very, very quick presentation of the Planning and Building Act and how we work with policies for architecture on a national level and local level in Sweden. I'm very pleased to be here in Gothenburg because it's where I live and it's where I've been working for 20 years of my life. So I'm very happy to be here today. And actually, this is my old office. I stole this picture from Henrik, who's going to speak afterwards. And when I was working in Gothenburg for 10 years, I worked with this project together with hundreds of other people, of course. And I think it's very interesting because this shows a place where we had a gap in time. The formal process, according to the Planning and Building Act, it was going to take a long time because this is an area in the middle of the town. It's an old industrial area. And we used actually the time gap in planning to do a prototype together with the inhabitants of a park and also of temporary housing. So right now we have 400 temporary housings on this spot and the park. It's actually not temporary anymore, it's permanent. And all the learnings from this project we built into the planning and building process according to the Planning and Building Act. So this is an example of how you can work parallel. Prototyping, trying, building temporary buildings, temporary homes, and a park at the same time as you're planning for the long-term perspective. So you are in the room, go there and look at this. The Planning and Building Act in Sweden is, of course, as in Ukraine, a comprehensive framework for urban planning and construction. It focuses on sustainable development, efficient land use, and a high standard of living. The significance of public participation is very, very important, and decision-making and consultations. And actually it's a promotion of democratic principles and transparent governance. The power is in the municipality's hand, not in the government's hand. And the overall paragraph says that the provision aimed to, with regard to the freedom of the individual, promote a societal development with equal and good social living conditions and a good and long-term sustainable living environment for the people in today's society and for future generations. And I think that's beautiful writing. Just to have a quick overview because you're talking about doing amendments and actually do a whole new Planning and Building Act in Ukraine. In Sweden, this job started in 1874. Before that, the king decided everything. But from 1874, we've had a Planning and Building Act, and we have done amendments to it. In 1987, we got the new Planning and Building Act, and we are still doing amendments, and the politicians today talk about simplifying the legislation and also about, of course, doing the public participation even better. So we're still working on this, and it takes a long time to get a good legislation. down at the bottom, you see 290 municipalities. That's where the power is. The parliament and the government, they take decisions on new legislation. The national agencies, they give advices to the parliament and the government and write the legislation that the parliament decides upon. And the 21 country administrative boards give advices to the cities and see that they really follow this legislation. And the decision making is a part of the municipality's power. Oh, my mic's not working. Now it's working. What did you do? No, it doesn't. So could you please just, next slide, please, Parmika. Thank you. So we have comprehensive plans in the cities that every city should have this, and it gives advices and shows the vision of the city and land use. Next slide. And detailed development plans, and also in the geographical level in between. You can choose if you want to have a program for detailed plans. Next slide, please. Dialogue with stakeholders is really, really important. Let's see if it works now. No, next slide. After the first policy for architecture in Sweden in 1998, we did amendments to the legislation, and architecture got a much more central role in the legislation. For example, purposeful structure and aesthetically pleasing design in the second chapter, and good color, shape, and material effects in the 8th chapter of the legislation. Next. To complement the legislation, we have a bunch of national goals. Next. Where the policy for design living environments that I told you about last time, the policy for architecture, design, cultural heritage, and art is central and really combines the other national goals. Next. Next. And the goal for architecture, that is a complement to the Planning and Building Act, says that architecture should contribute to a sustainable society with carefully designed living environments, and that everyone is well placed to influence the development of their shared environment. Next. So this is really about all the living environments that we have around us, and that architecture can do and create values in all of those environments. So next. Homes. Next. Architecture in schools, for example, very, very important. The environments that you cannot choose, that you need to go to. Next. And in hospitals and care facilities. Next. And public space. Next. Public space outdoors and indoors, as is on the last picture. Next. And of course, the blue and green structure in the city. Next. So the policy for design living environments for architecture really points out that when you work on a city planning level, down to the details, this is a very, very important factor. Next. It takes a holistic view, so you should really have those questions with you when you plan, when you manage, when you build, and so forth. Next. And says that quality in architecture, form and design is about creating value, not only for the customer and the user, but also for the surrounding society and future generations. Next. So the Planning and Building Act and the National Policy for Architecture are really two documents that goes hand in hand. But with the Planning and Building Act, you can make decision about planning. But then you have a lot of other tools in the cities. The cities maybe own land, public space, schools, and so forth. And how can you enhance good architecture, good quality environment in all of that, in planning, in building, in managing. And that's why we say that you need to complement the Planning and Building Act, the detailed plans and the comprehensive plans, with a strategic plan for architecture, strategic policy for architecture in each municipality in Sweden. Next. Next. Oh, okay. Next. So the National Board for Housing, Building and Planning, we made guidelines that says that all cities in Sweden should have architecture strategies. And it's about creating value in with the help of architecture. And it's in connection to the Planning and Building Act. And we have examples on how you do this in Sweden in all different municipalities, because it should be different in all municipalities, as all municipalities are not alike. Next. And a lot of municipalities do have local policies for architecture, and it's a tool for the municipality to work with the planning, the building, and the managing of public space, buildings in this big scale and in the small scale. Next. And you can take the next. And we show some examples, and you have a whole bunch of examples on our website in Swedish, of course. You can do Google Translate, and here are some of those. Next. For example, Borlänge, a small town in the mid part of Sweden. They have 6 architectural principles. It's about the design, and it's about the historical context and the site's condition and long-term sustainability and inclusiveness and integrate green structures and biodiversity. And when they work with this policy, they work with kids. They have architecture schools with kids. They work with those principles in their comprehensive plan, in dialogues, and so forth. So they use it in a wide range of their work. Next. Eskilstuna, 7 goals, for example. Develop identity, holistic view, support daily life, use the power of nature, enriching environments, future in mind, open up for discussion. Same thing here. They use it for a wide range of activities, from dialogues with kids, with elderly people, in the planning process, in managing, and so forth. Next. Malmö, they have a toolbox. So they did it this way. And they have this chart, and they use that in all type of discussions in planning, building, and managing the city. They're looking at the city, the room, and the place. And they are discussing that from different types of angles, as function, aesthetics, and future. Next. Some cities do not have a strategic policy, but they work with the question anyway, as Karlshamn. And they did it in a very, very nice way. They have, for example, their architecture week that all people in Sweden now know of, because it's famous, and they put themselves on the map of architecture. Next. So right now in Sweden, half of the cities have architecture policies, and a lot of cities are now also producing those documents, and they use them in different ways and together with the Planning and Building Act. Some cities, they had their major take a decision on them, and some cities have the decision been taken by the building authority. Next. And you can get those slides afterwards. And all of those policies, they somehow, in different ways, take on the subject, what is architecture, and what is architecture in our municipality, from our context, for creating sense of place in our, and beauty in our society. Next. And they're also addressing what values can architecture give to the society. Next. how each municipality can develop carefully designed living environments in their municipality that gives values to the places, people, and society as a whole. Next. And also embody the vision of the city. Next. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand over to Gothenburg, I think.